Do you think this is a toy for cleaning ladies? The professor's voice cut through the rehearsal hall like a blade. Laughter erupted. Someone pulled out a phone, a student whispered, grinning. Tag this. When the janitor dreams of being a pianist. It was supposed to be a joke, a moment for the elites of the conservatory to bond over ridicule. She stood by the Steinway grand piano, her gloved hand frozen in the air. She hadn't even touched the keys. She was just remembering. Worn shoes, faded uniform, a mop bucket standing silently beside her. She didn't respond. No apology, no panic, just one quiet breath, and then she stepped back, wiped the piano, benched gently, picked up the mop, and walked away. Like she'd been humiliated before, like she'd learned how to wear silence like armor. But the room. It still hummed with something unsettled. They thought they'd shut her down. They didn't know. They'd just triggered something that had been buried. The Conservatory of Ariston didn't just train musicians, it curated bloodlines. Walking through its corridors was like stepping into a private club, disguised as a music school. Everything shimmered, the chandeliers, the marble pillars, the glass-paneled practice rooms. But it wasn't the beauty that made people fall silent when they entered. It was the pressure, the invisible wall that separated them from her. Here legacy was louder than talent. Students weren't just here to learn scales. They were continuing a lineage. Many of their parents had never played an instrument, but they owned orchestras. They didn't study Bach. They donated wings to buildings named after him. These weren't just students. They were heirs to cultural empires, groomed to perform, not just music, but prestige. Even the silence had texture here. It wasn't awkward. It was expensive. The way they walked, the way they sipped tea between rehearsals, even the way they nodded during a master class, it all came from generations of unspoken training. Refinement wasn't taught. It was inherited. And in that world, she didn't just stand out. She was an anomaly. The janitor. A woman barely in her 20s, wearing rubber gloves and faded shoes, pushing a mop across the same marble where concert pianists had once stood. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She never lingered. But that was the problem. She never seemed intimidated. Some called her ghost-like, others arrogant. She made no noise, but somehow disrupted everything. There were rumors she's always the last one to leave. I swear I saw her playing a few notes, then stopping. No. You imagined it, but they hadn't. One night a violinist claimed he passed by Studio 7 and heard something a phrase from Liszt's La Campanella, too clean, too precise. He opened the door and saw her sitting there. The music had already stopped. She looked up, not startled, not ashamed, just still. Then she stood, nodded once, and walked away. He told security. The next morning, no footage existed. It had been erased clean, as if it never happened. The incident became an inside joke. The phantom pianist. Some made memes, others laughed over drinks, but a few began watching her differently. Not out of pity, out of unease, because nothing in Ariston happened by accident. And no one in Ariston walked with that much calm, unless they were hiding something. She didn't belong, but she didn't beg to belong either. She moved through the conservatory like a forgotten melody, soft, persistent and impossible to ignore, once heard. But soon her silence would be replaced by something louder than any name. Because the moment was coming, when Ariston would need saving, and only she could play the note that held it all together. It started as a whisper, then it turned into a murmur, and finally it became content. At first, only a few students noticed her presence, a fleeting glimpse in the back of the recital hall, a mop bucket resting near the Steinway. But soon people began to talk. She thinks she's one of us. Saw her touching the piano again. Someone needs to tell her this isn't her fantasy. Someone recorded a short clip. 2 seconds of her standing still beside the concert. Piano eyes closed. No context, no sound. The caption read, "When the janitor dreams she's in Juilliard." It spread faster than anyone expected, shared across private group chats. Discord servers, student forums. Even a few professors chuckled when shown, but it didn't stop there. Soon there were memes, screenshots of her cleaning shoes edited onto posters for world tours, her face pasted onto magazine covers. The ghost, pianist returns. The joke stung. But what cut deeper were the comments. She probably broke into that studio. Crazy runs in the family. They say bet she's never played a note in her life. Some students began following her around, not with curiosity, but with their phones. They waited for her to do anything odd, pause near an instrument, glance toward a rehearsal room. They filmed her, laughed, shared. To them, she wasn't real. She was a story, a distraction, a target. But she never reacted. She kept scrubbing, kept her head down, even as her image bounced across screens like a viral punchline. She carried on as if none of it mattered. But it did matter, because in a place like Ariston, silence is often mistaken for permission. A group of students began planning a social experiment. They wanted to see if she'd actually try to play if no one was watching, or if she'd run away when confronted. They chose a time. They set up phones. They told security not to interfere. She entered the empty recital room during her late shift. As always, she wiped the piano bench, adjusted the lid, and then just stood there. She didn't play. She didn't even sit. She just stood. And that was enough. They burst in, 3 students, one with a GoPro. One shouting, caught in the act. "What do you think you're doing?" Stealing inspiration again, pretending to matter. She turned, not angry, not afraid. She only said 4 words. "You can delete it." Then she walked away. But they didn't delete it. They uploaded it. And within hours, the clip trended across campus networks. She was once again the butt of the joke. But this time, the cruelty was louder, sharper, personal. And just when they thought they'd humiliated her enough, fate gave them one more chance to push her further. A chance that would become their greatest mistake. 2 days before the Winter Gala, the entire conservatory buzzed with rehearsals. Not for music, but for optics. Every spotlight angle had to be perfect. Every donor name on the seat chart had to be spelled right. They weren't just preparing a concert, they were staging a legacy. That morning, the girl in gray was assigned to backstage detail. She moved quietly as always, head down, gloves on her mop, never squeaking on the marble. At 11:47 a.m., a student accidentally spilled a cup of espresso near the Steinway Grand on stage. Jenna Carter, daughter of a pharma billionaire, tilted her head with mock sweetness. Oops, guess the help's needed up front. Security radioed in the janitor. Cameras caught everything. She arrived without urgency, just her cloth, a small spray bottle, and the same practiced silence. She knelt beside the piano's left leg, wiping the puddle with gentle precision. But then her hand brushed something beneath the bench. A folded sheet of glossy paper. She opened it. A fake recital poster, her face crudely pasted onto a sewer rat, wearing a pink bow sitting at a toy piano. The text read, "Ariston presents From Trash to Treble, a Rat's Musical, Debut." Behind her someone chuckled, then more laughter followed, rising giddy like a fire catching wind. She didn't move, a few more steps. A pause. Then "I hope you're not rehearsing for your solo." That voice, Dr. Lyle, chair of the performance faculty, esteemed guest conductor, author of Discipline Before Genius. He stepped forward, slowly, voice perfectly projected. "You've been tolerated long enough. Let's be clear. This isn't some fairy tale scrubbing. This stage doesn't make it yours. And that piano, that's not for hands like yours." Dead silence. Every student froze. Every phone stayed on record. They knew this wasn't just another prank. This was official, an institution putting someone back in her place. She stood, no shaking hands, no tearful stare. She looked at him, then at the crowd. She carefully folded the poster, once, then again, slipped it into her coat, walked slowly, deliberately toward the Steinway. Everyone tensed. She didn't touch the keys. She adjusted the piano bench, 2 centimeters left. 1 forward, centered, then turned to Dr. Lyle, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your bench was crooked. I fixed it." She turned and walked off stage, and in that moment, the laughter died. Because there was something terrifying in her calm, not submission, not rebellion, just clarity. It was the kind of silence that didn't ask for respect. It commanded it. Phones kept recording. No one laughed. No one followed her. Dr. Lyle adjusted his tie. No one met his eye. That day, nobody spoke about the music. They only whispered about her. Transition. But humiliation has a strange way of circling back, because just 24 hours later, Ariston would face a disaster that legacy couldn't fix. And the girl they tried to erase would be the only one who could play them out of ruin. The Winter Gala had never been this packed. Hundreds of guests arrived in black tie splendor. Limousines lined the cobblestone streets. Inside the chandeliers dripped gold, and the air smelled of old money and polished mahogany. It was the night Ariston sold not just music, but mythology. Every seat in the grand hall was taken. Board members, donors, alumni flown in from Europe. And in the front row, Arthur Linwood, the chairman of the National Symphony Trust. The performance was set to begin in 15 minutes. Backstage chaos. Sophia Brandt, the star pianist headlining the gala, had collapsed. Her fingers cramped, her vision blurry. Doctors said it was acute nerve fatigue. One more note and she could lose her hand. She sat there, tears in her eyes, whispering, "I can't go on." Dr. Lyle paled. The entire program had been structured around Sophia's rendition of La Campanella, a notoriously difficult piece that no one else on campus dared to perform. They couldn't replace her. No backup, no understudy. They had minutes to make a decision. We postpone, Lyle said. Announce a delay, blame a technical issue, but that wouldn't work. Arthur Linwood was known for two things: his hatred for excuses and his habit of withdrawing funding without warning. A whisper traveled among the staff. "There's one more person." Everyone turned. "Who? You can't be serious. You mean her." The girl in gray stood silently at the edge of the hallway. She had been wiping down the doorknobs to the dressing rooms. As if she hadn't heard the panic building behind her, a junior staff member stepped forward. "She knows the piece. I've heard her. At Night Studio 7. She played it like she was born into it." Dr. Lyle looked like he'd swallowed poison. "Absolutely not. We can't risk the stage for a janitor's fantasy." But Arthur Linwood overheard. He turned. "Can she play it or not?" Silence. Then, "Yes." Linwood narrowed his eyes. "Then I don't care where she cleans. If she can deliver La Campanella, she plays." And just like that, the decision was made. They rushed to fit her into a simple black dress. No makeup, no announcements. The program didn't change, only the performer. As the lights dimmed, the MC walked on stage due to unforeseen changes in the lineup. The gala's opening performance will now be delivered by a member of our own Ariston family. No one clapped, not yet. She stepped onto the stage, alone. Hair pulled back, hands steady. Face unreadable. The audience didn't recognize her, not yet. But they would. Because when her fingers touched the keys, the world they built to keep her out would fall silent to let her in. The hall was silent. Not the hush of anticipation, but of confusion. She wasn't on the program. She wasn't dressed for spectacle. No dramatic entrance. No name announced. Just a girl in black sitting at the Steinway. Her hands rested on her lap for a moment. Then, with a breath so quiet, only the front row noticed, she placed her fingers on the keys, and then she began. It wasn't loud. Not at first. La Campanella is built on delicacy, on the illusion of lightness, as if the pianist is brushing across glass. But what came out of the piano wasn't just notes. It was restraint. It was rage, held in grace. It was everything they thought she wasn't: disciplined, precise, transcendent. The melody leapt and shimmered. Every note landed with impossible accuracy. The kind that doesn't come from practice, but from pain, carried quietly over years. In the third movement, something shifted. The right-hand flourishes, normally meant to dazzle, felt like sharp whispers. The left-hand rhythm, steady and grounded, beat like a second heart, as if saying, "You ignored me, but I was always here." Somewhere in the 5th row, a woman gasped. In the 10th row, a former alum whispered, "That phrasing, I've never heard it played like that." Dr. Lyle stood frozen, backstage mouth dry. Arthur Linwood leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes locked. By the final passage, the audience was holding its breath. And when the last trill faded into the golden dome, she didn't look up. She didn't bow. She simply lifted her hands off the keys, placed them in her lap, and sat still. 1 second, then 2. And then the applause, not polite, not delayed, explosive. Like something had snapped in the air and come alive. People stood, not because they were told to, because something in them rose. Phones were forgotten. Whispers silenced. The girl they mocked, erased, and humiliated had just given them a performance none of their pedigreed protégés could deliver. She didn't play for them, she played through them. She didn't demand the stage, she proved they were lucky. She chose to stand on it. And in that moment, she wasn't the janitor. She was the music itself. But legacies aren't just shaken by brilliance, they're shattered by truth. And in the hours that followed, the consequences of what they'd done would finally come to collect. The standing ovation had barely faded when the first video hit the student network. Someone had filmed her entire performance from the quiet entrance to the last silent breath before she stood up. Within 10 minutes, it was reposted on Ariston's alumni group. Within an hour, it was on Twitter. By midnight, it had crossed 1 million views. The caption read, "No name, no spotlight. Just pure genius. Who is she?" The replies came like wildfire. Some students tried to delete their old memes. Others changed their usernames, hoping no one would connect them to the old posts mocking her. But it was too late, because alongside the video came the truth. An anonymous thread appeared online titled, "The Girl in Gray, the Real Story." It wasn't gossip. It was receipts, screenshots of the fake posters, clips from the GoPro ambush, even emails between certain students mocking her behind her back. But what stunned everyone was this A-Scan newspaper clipping from 6 years ago, a photo of her standing beside a world-renowned conductor in Vienna. Headline: Young Piano. Prodigy withdraws from European tour due to mother's illness. Her name had been changed when she joined Ariston. No one had connected the dots. Until now, Dr. Lyle was the first to face questions. Journalists began calling. Board members sent emails. Did you know who she was? Why was she cleaning floors instead of teaching master classes? The next day, the school's official account released a statement. "We are proud to recognize the talent within our community. We deeply regret any past oversights, but the comments weren't kind. Oversight: you humiliated her, you filmed her, mocked her, and now you want credit for discovering her." Meanwhile, donors began to pull out. One patron withdrew a $2. 3M endowment. "I refuse to support a culture that silences brilliance." The students who had ridiculed her, suspended 2, expelled Jenna. Carter's family issued a public apology, scripted and sterile, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. She, however, said nothing. She didn't appear in interviews, didn't post, didn't clap back. She went back to her duties, quiet, composed. Only now, when she passed the halls, students stepped aside, professors nodded, no one dared whisper. And yet she didn't walk taller. She didn't act like someone who'd won. Because she hadn't come to win, she came to survive, to protect what mattered, to honor her mother's last wish. Keep playing, no matter who tries to stop you. But survival had done more than protect her. It revealed everyone else, and in her silence, the world finally listened. A week passed. The gala was still being talked about. Not for its program, not for its donors, not even for the $1 million stage design. But for her. They now called her the Gray Virtuoso. An entire Reddit thread was dedicated to decoding her performance. Music critics debated her phrasing like scholars arguing over scripture. But she said nothing. She didn't accept interviews, didn't attend the celebratory luncheon hosted in her honor, didn't appear at the donor dinner where Arthur Linwood gave a speech about unconventional brilliance. Instead, she clocked in at 6:00 a.m. the next morning as usual. She changed in the janitor's locker room, and by noon, she was gone. A resignation letter, handwritten, folded twice, was left on the head. Custodian's desk. She didn't ask for recognition, didn't request a stage, didn't claim back pay or apology. She left behind a piano bench, a line just so, a music sheet tucked under the lid, marked with faint pencil notes, and an entire school. In silence, Dr. Lyle submitted his early retirement 3 days later. Jenna Carter withdrew from public performances. 2 faculty members requested transfer, and students. They changed, not overnight. Not all, but slowly. The rehearsals got quieter. The laughter lost its edge. Respect became less about resumes and more about presence. One morning, a young student found a note taped to Studio 7's door. There's no power in being the loudest, only in knowing when not to play. No name, but everyone knew she didn't stay to be thanked. Didn't wait to be forgiven, because her existence wasn't about proving anything. It was about protecting something sacred. And so, she left the same way she came. Quiet, unannounced, necessary. But the echo of her final performance stayed. In every note played afterward, in every eye that met the piano differently, in every student who asked themselves, what if we listened sooner? And somewhere far from Ariston, in a smaller room with no chandeliers, a girl sits at a piano not to impress, but because playing is the only thing that ever felt like home. What makes a person worthy? Is it their title, their clothes, the applause they receive, or the silence they endure? At Ariston, they thought worth was measured by resumes, recommendations, and the right last names. That prestige came from proximity to power, from being seen in the right rooms with the right people. But they were wrong, because the girl they dismissed for pushing a mop was the only one strong enough to carry the weight of their silence, the only one who didn't break when mocked, erased, or tested. And she never raised her voice, because power doesn't need volume, it needs conviction. She didn't destroy them. She didn't humiliate them back. She simply stood still long enough for the truth to show itself. And maybe that's the real lesson, that the person you overlook, the one you step around without a glance, might be the person holding up the room you're standing in. That brilliance doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it whispers, and only those who are willing to listen hear it. She was never there to impress. She was there to remind them that music, like humanity, isn't reserved for the chosen few. It belongs to those who carry it quietly, who guard it when no one's looking, who don't need stages to prove they matter. She reminded them that kindness is the highest form of intelligence, that silence when chosen can be the loudest answer, and that uniforms can hide truth as easily as tuxedos hide ego. What they saw as a janitor was a master in disguise, not seeking their validation, only protecting her own peace. So, the next time you see someone standing on the margins before you judge, ask yourself, what story are they carrying that you never took the time to hear? If this story touched something in you, a memory, a hurt, a silence you've carried, then maybe it wasn't just hers. Maybe it's a reminder that dignity doesn't come from applause, but from standing your ground when no one claps at all. If you've ever been overlooked, misjudged, or made to feel small, know this: you are not invisible and you are never alone. There's power in walking quietly. There's courage in staying kind. And sometimes the softest voice can echo the loudest. If this story moved, you share it. Let someone else feel seen. Let someone else know they matter. And if you haven't yet subscribed, we have more stories like this, because some truths deserve to be heard.